If there's a Linux distribution that has managed to be simultaneously loved and criticized by the same community, it's Linux Mint. Millions of users consider it the best gateway into the world of Linux. It's stable, it looks good, it works out of the box without any headaches. And yet, the team behind it has made, over the years, a few decisions that sparked heated debates, generated endless threads on Reddit, and caused part of the Linux community to raise an eyebrow and ask, do you actually know what you're doing? I'm talking about 3 of the most controversial decisions made by the Linux Mint team. I'm not going to tell you they were wrong or that they were right. I'm going to present the arguments from both sides and let you be the judge. Let's dive straight into it. It was May 2020 when Clement Lefebvre, the founder and leader of the Linux Mint project, published an article on the official blog that exploded across the Linux community. The message was clear. Linux Mint 20 would actively block the installation of Snap. Not just that it wouldn't include Snap by default. No. Mint would put a mechanism in place to prevent Snap from being installed, even if the user tried to install it manually through apt. Why? Lefebvre explained that the main issue wasn't Snap technology itself, but the centralization it implies. In the Ubuntu ecosystem, the Snap Store is controlled exclusively by Canonical. There is no functional open source alternative for the server side. Anyone who wants to distribute Snap packages has to go through Canonical's infrastructure. And there was something else. More and more packages in Ubuntu had started to be silently replaced with Snap variants, without the user being explicitly informed. The most famous example, Chromium. If you typed sudo apt install Chromium on Ubuntu, behind the apt command, a Snap package was actually being installed. No warning, no consent. Lefebvre considered this an unacceptable practice for an operating system that respects its users. On the other hand, the main criticism was that the Mint team was imposing a choice on the user. If someone wants to use Snap on Linux Mint, why should they be prevented from doing so? Linux is, by definition, about freedom, and actively blocking a package manager seems to contradict that very philosophy. Others argued that Snap brings real benefits: faster package updates, better application isolation, the ability to install software that wouldn't otherwise be available for your distribution. By blocking Snap, Mint automatically cuts off access to that entire ecosystem. Many Linux Mint users and free software advocates saw this decision as an act of courage. Their central argument was simple. If the Snap Store cannot be self-hosted, then Snap is not truly free and open source in any practical sense. It's a cloud service controlled by a private company wrapped in open source clothing. On top of that, Snap packages are slower to launch, consume more disk space, and their sandboxing can create integration issues with the system's theme and fonts. If you've ever used a Snap application on a non-Ubuntu desktop, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The icons look different, the fonts don't match, everything feels slightly off. The Snap block is still active in Linux Mint. Flatpak, the alternative backed by Mint, is installed by default and integrated into the software manager. Mint has chosen to bet on Flatpak as the universal solution for sandboxed packages, and so far, the Mint community seems satisfied with that choice. But the debate isn't over. Canonical continues to expand the Snap ecosystem, and the distance between Ubuntu and Linux Mint keeps growing. If the first decision was one of active opposition, the second is one of passive resistance. And in many ways, it's even more controversial: Wayland. For those who don't know, Wayland is a modern display protocol for Linux, designed to replace the old X window system, also known as X11 or Xorg. X11 has decades behind it. It's robust, battle-tested, but comes with an aging architecture that makes it difficult to implement modern features. Smoother touchpad gestures, protection against unauthorized screen capturing, reduced rendering latency, better support for high DPI displays, and multi-monitor setups. Major distributions have moved to Wayland. GNOME adopted it as default years ago. KDE Plasma switched to Wayland by default. Fedora implemented it long ago. Ubuntu has it enabled by default. Even more conservative distributions have moved in that direction. Linux Mint continues to use X11 as the default option. And on top of that, the Mint team has communicated on multiple occasions that it's in no rush to make this transition. Critics say this position is becoming increasingly difficult to defend. The Wayland problems of 2024 aren't the problems of 2026 anymore. The ecosystem has matured. Most users running GNOME or KDE on other distributions don't encounter daily issues with Wayland. Some even report a smoother experience. There's also a serious security argument. X11 has an architecture that allows any application to read the input and output of any other application. On X11, a malicious application can record everything you type, take screenshots, intercept the clipboard without you ever knowing. Wayland isolates applications and prevents exactly this type of attack. So the question became, is Mint truly more stable and secure by refusing to adopt a protocol that offers superior security guarantees? The team's main argument is one that anyone who has used Mint understands instinctively: stability above all else. Linux Mint has a huge user base coming from Windows, users who don't want to experiment, who want a system that works today, tomorrow, and a year from now without surprises. Wayland, although it has come a long way, still has real issues. Applications based on X-Wayland, meaning X11 applications running through a compatibility layer on Wayland, can behave unpredictably. Screen sharing doesn't work consistently across all applications. Certain accessibility tools aren't fully compatible. Some video capture or streaming applications have problems. At the time of making this video, Linux Mint offers Wayland as an experimental session, but X11 remains the default option. The team has acknowledged that Wayland is the future and that the transition will come, but on their own terms, not under pressure from the community or industry trends. Some call it responsible caution. Others call it plain stubbornness. And we arrive at the third decision, which may not have been as loud as the first two, but for part of the community, it was the most painful. For several years, Linux Mint offered multiple official editions. Cinnamon, its own desktop, created by the Mint team, but also Mate, XFCE, and, most importantly for its fans, KDE. The KDE edition of Linux Mint was a hugely appreciated combination. The stability and philosophy of Mint, paired with the flexibility and customization power of the KDE Plasma desktop. For many users, it was the perfect recipe. And then, in 2017, the Linux Mint team announced it was permanently dropping the KDE edition. No replacement, no transition plan, simply, it no longer exists. KDE fans were, understandably, disappointed. KDE Plasma is one of the most powerful and customizable desktops in the Linux world. There's an entire category of users who simply can't imagine working on anything other than KDE. Linux Mint with KDE was an excellent entry point for this type of user, a system familiar in philosophy and easy to use, but with the configuration power of KDE. With the disappearance of this edition, these users had to migrate, most often to KDE Neon or Kubuntu, which are good distributions but don't have quite the same user-friendly approach as Mint. Critics said the decision betrayed part of the community and that the Mint team should have found an alternative solution, perhaps an unofficial community edition or a partnership with the KDE community. Lefebvre explained that maintaining multiple editions with different desktops consumed enormous resources in testing, development, and support. Every system update, every package change had to be tested across all 4 variants. With a small team and limited resources, it was practically impossible to keep all editions at the same standard of quality. The decision was essentially one of focusing efforts. Mint wanted to make Cinnamon as good as possible, rather than making 4 desktops acceptably good. Interestingly, after the KDE edition disappeared, KDE Neon emerged, a distribution based on Ubuntu LTS with up-to-date KDE Plasma launched by the KDE team itself. Many former Linux Mint KDE users migrated there. The Mate edition survived and still exists. So does XFC. But KDE never returned to the official Linux Mint portfolio. 3 decisions, 3 different perspectives, and one thing in common: all of them were made by a small team with limited resources trying to build a Linux distribution that serves millions of users. You may agree or disagree with blocking Snap. You may consider the refusal of Wayland cautious or backwards. You may feel nostalgic about the KDE edition, or you may believe that sacrificing it made Cinnamon better. But there's one thing that's hard to deny. Linux Mint has a clear and coherent vision of what it wants to be, a stable, accessible operating system that puts the user first and doesn't blindly follow industry trends. And even if you don't agree with every individual decision, that philosophy is, in itself, a rare thing in the Linux world. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these decisions do you find the most controversial? Do you agree with the Mint team, or do you think they got it wrong? Leave me a comment below. I'm curious to see what the community thinks. If you enjoyed the video, hit like, subscribe if you aren't already, and ring the bell so you don't miss anything. See you in the next video.